In the previous video, we looked at creating what you see on the screen with a bit of storyboarding and how to arrange the elements and get the time sequence correct in the timeline. But looking at the finished picture, it's missing a few graphical elements, and it's missing a flow that pulls the elements together in a much better way. So we want to create some additional graphics which are not available in Doodly, but we also want to create them so that they fit in the right place and are the right size. So the easiest way in which to achieve that is as follows. Choose the snipping tool or any screen capture tool and do a screen capture of your presentation. Once you have that, you can copy that and then paste that into a program of your choice. In my case, I use a program called Affinity Designer. So I would go new from clipboard, and now I can go ahead and start adding elements to my page. So here I have created elements that I would like to add, and I've positioned them on the page where I think they should go and where they should fit. So in order to see if this element is in the correct place, what I would do is I would hide the fill. I can then position the element, see that it's going to fit, and now I can have a look at my page with the graphical elements that I need. In order to get the elements to my page, I would then export each one, and I'd export them as an SVG. Selection without a background, so they're transparent. The backgrounds are transparent. I would then export, and I'll put them in this folder, and I'll call it Asset A, and it'll be number 1. And I'll go to the next item, export that as a SVG, selection without a background, and we'll call that Asset A, and we'll call that number 2. I'll call this one Asset A number 3. And we'll call that one Asset A number 4. So those are the elements that we're going to export, and the last one export Asset A number 5. So those are the assets we're going to export. We can now go back to our presentation. We don't need that anymore, and we can go and import our assets into Doodly. To do that, we'll go to My Library. We'll then say Add, and we'll now go to the folder that contained those animations. I'm just doing that on a separate screen. Right, so we'll go with our first one. What you can do is drag and drop it onto the window and hit continue. So Asset A number 1 has been uploaded. We go to the next one. Asset A number 2. And you'll see these are very small files, so the upload is very quick. Asset A number 3. Asset A number 4. And the last one, number 5. So now we have to position these in the timeline. Okay, and when we position these, we want to give them a display time of 0, and because we've already done the timing, preferably a 0 in the duration. Otherwise, we have to go in and redo all the timings. So normally this would occur earlier in the process. However, sometimes it's best to see the end of the presentation to see what it looks like. Right, well, let's start putting these assets in place. They're all included here at the bottom. What we can also do is create the animation path. Now, what happens with SVGs is when you create them, Doodly automatically creates this path for coloring in the image. If we say load SVG path, it will remove that and replace it with one of its own. However, you'll see here that it's not really going to work because it doesn't stay within the lines. It's not very effective. So what we'll do is we'll delete that path and we'll create our own. So we'll also just make the path a little bit thicker. We can then select. Now you'll see when you go around a corner, it doesn't stay on the road. What we need to do is something like that with a click before the corner, a click on the corner, and a click after the corner. Same for this one. Maybe there and over there. And if we want to now, we can make that path a little bit smaller, or we can leave it a little bit thicker. And that's just to make sure that all the lines get colored in when it's drawn. So there you have it. We can now save and return. That path is done. We can have a look at maybe this one, which is going to go at the top. So let's have a look at that. Let's see what path is going to be loaded directly. Load SVG path. Okay, it's not able to do that, so let's add our own. Oh. For some reason, it doesn't want to do anything to do with the SVG path on this particular item. Okay, in that case, we can't have an SVG path. It won't allow us. Let's try another asset. Well, that one is pretty close. If we increase the size, it might get a little bit better. And if we zoom in over here, it might just take some small tweaking. Maybe what we can do is select that item, move that out, move that one over. It's not very pretty. And let's make it thinner. So sometimes it will get pretty close and other times it doesn't come close. There's no way of editing this path as it stands. So it is a bit frustrating because I can't go in and add a node here because it continues from there. So it is a little bit frustrating when it comes to these paths. So that's probably the best that we're going to get with the way that this has been interpreted. By the software. Okay, so let's leave that one like that. Let's have a look and see what happens if we have our circle created. Right, in this case, it's not going to allow us to create one. So we won't be drawing anything there. And let's have a look at this one. Well, for some reason, that one came out really well. So that one looks great. Right, let's position these elements where we'd like them to be. Now we'll start at the top with the presentation, and in our graphic you'll see that we stretch that one all the way across the screen. So we'll do the same here. And to get that to be in the right place, let's take that to the top. Right, there we have it, and we might want it to come down just a little bit, and we might want the just to go up just a little bit, and there we'd want that to be a 0. The next item we're going to look at is to put a circle behind that asset. So we can make a copy because there'll be more required. Right, there's our copy. And we'll do the same thing with this one. We'll move it up to the right place. There's our light bulb. That's that. Move that one. Right, that light bulb looks fine. Once again, the drawing will be 0. We'll take this one, make a copy. And we know that it's going to go behind that one. Move it up in the timeline. Maybe it's more interesting if it has a little bit of an overlap on the top, so we'll leave it like that. Copy and paste. Move that one across there. Slightly up. Make a copy. All wrapped up. Might have to move that a bit. So there we go. We have our circles in place. We can delete that one. We know that this asset will come in over here. This one must be positioned behind that person standing. We can then move that into place. And all that's left now is to put the graphic for the words in the right place. Let's go down. It's right at the top. In position, next one. Make the drawing 0. Next idea. Perfect. You can adjust the size, of course. Copy that one. We're into the conclusion. I think that works, and let's wrap it up. What you can also do, if you don't want to adjust the time on an individual basis for each element, is by going into the settings, you can set the default animation there to 1 second. Except we're not allowed to edit this one, so we won't do that. All right, there we're going to wrap it up. And we'll just make sure that that one is on a 0. So there we have that element in place. So now we have the presentation theme coming down, and that starts to look a little bit more interesting. What we can also do at the top is maybe look at taking one of these elements and then to highlight the presentation name is inserted at the top. Scroll down. Let's find that on the timeline. Presentation theme. Take that copy. Okay. Conclusion. So there we have it. We've now created our presentation and we've made it look a lot more interesting by including those elements. What we might want to do is add some text here. Right, so there's our presentation looking a lot better. We can scroll down the list, make sure that all the graphic elements that we've inserted have a 0 entry animation speed. And now if we preview our presentation, you'll see visually it's a lot more interesting. It's more attractive. Now, that was some timing issue there. So obviously one of the elements coming in is not on 0. There we go. We also saw that the initial animation needs to be positioned higher up, and we can make it a little bit bigger. So to do that, drag that corner. Apply. So let's have another quick look. Second idea. Let's move down to the next idea. That looks good. The arrow across, nice and quick. The conclusion, moving up. So where we might want to add something in or slow down things a bit is I think that was the one. Yeah, so we can just see that animation coming in. And then that one. And finally then zooming out and looking at a much more interesting and attractive presentation, but making the elements in a separate program that we know will work and fit to size and be the right aspect ratio. For more complicated or more in-depth animations, you might want to create more detailed design, and that's fine because you can make it to fit a specific space perfectly. So let's have another look at that. Move across, we have a look at the second idea. Fantastic. Come down to another idea at the bottom. Move across to the conclusion. Nice. We see the conclusion drawn nicely. Up to the wrap it all up. And then there we go. In the wrap it all up at number 5, you saw that it hit the number. So if we want to have that visible, we would have to move that, either move wrap it all up, or we could move the elements, swap them around so that this came in there. But that's going to look a little bit wrong. So it will be better to move the text out and maybe make that just a little bit bigger. So now if we have a look at that transition, which was, it fits perfectly. Great. Now we can export that animation. Let's change the name. And continue. So in this presentation, what we were able to see is that we can do a screenshot of our layout, take that into a separate application, create the graphics that we want in the way that we want, create them to meet our design requirements, create specific sizes, save them as SVG files, bring them back into Doodly, and then position them where we want, expand them, adjust them in the timeline, and then when we're finished, we have a much more interesting presentation, and the graphics and the other elements all fit perfectly. Now that the rendering is complete, let's have a look at the finished product. Here we go. So all the elements are coming in really nicely, and the additional graphics have added a new dimension to the presentation, making it a lot more interesting. And then over to the middle section for the final picture. And there you have it. A nice way to increase the impact of your presentation and a very easy way to create the right graphics to fit in the right place. Thank you for watching.